Hi, welcome back to the workshop for the second instalment of the Micawber Telecaster build. In the first episode I cut the body out of this lovely bit of swamp ash, and in this episode I'm going to continue by routing all the cavities into the body. Okay, so when we left last time this was fresh off the router table and the outside edges were a little bit rough still, but I've been and sanded around them all and it's looking a lot better now. So you can see that's looking really nice and smooth. So the next stage is to get the cavities routed out for the pickup, the control panel and the neck pocket. I'm going to leave the neck pickup for the time being because that is going to be a humbucker and we haven't bought the pickup yet, so I'm not totally convinced what size that is going to be. So I'm going to leave that for the time being until we know what we need to be doing with it. So with any routing operations, the first step is always to kind of remove as much of the waste as possible, and I'm going to do that on the drill press with a big Forstner bit. So we'll take this down to kind of a little bit above the depth that we need, and then we'll get the templates on and route them to depth. Okay, so I've set this up with this depth stop so that the drill won't go down further than I'm going to route out. I've probably left about 3 or 4 mil at the bottom of the control cavity to take out with a router cutter. And I've just marked a centre line on this cavity so I can get the point of the Forstner bit in the right place easily. Okay, so with the kind of bulk of the waste hogged out from there, what I'm going to do is reattach the main template. And we've still got both the original screw holes here, so this should go back exactly where we need it. Okay, and now we can break out the router. Okay, so for the initial pass on this, I'm going to set this up to about 30mm depth. Now that might seem like a lot, but I've actually got a 25mm thick template, so I'm only actually going to be taking a 5mm bite out of this, which is just about right really. Then I'll go down as far as I can with this cutter with the template on, and then once I've established an edge, I can take the template off and use that as the guide for the routing. Okay, so I just want to explain a little bit about how I went about some of that routing. Now, I think most people have a very good understanding of how this works, but for some people this might be a bit new and a bit like witchcraft. So I'll just kind of explain. The cutter I used is one of these template bits. And basically what happens is there's a bearing on there that spins around and that rides against your template, meaning that the cutter can't cut past anything that's riding against. So that's the basics of how it works. Now, you might have seen me take the template off and kind of continue to cut, and the way I'm able to do that is I simply drop this down so that this bearing is then riding on the section of the wood that I've cut. So in effect you're using the work that you've already cut as a temporary template. Okay, so I use a number of different sizes of those, and that's simply because sometimes, you know, that might be a bit too long. Okay, so you need something a bit shorter to cut the depth that you need. So they're not particularly expensive. This set of 3 was probably £10, something like that, and they've lasted me probably a year. Another thing you might have seen me do was use these little things to rest my work on, and these are bench dogs or bench cookies, and basically they're a little plastic puck with some non-slip material on both sides. And they're brilliant. You know, you place your work on them and it's not moving. That is easily stable enough for most routing operations. And the beauty is you don't have to clamp your work down. So you don't have to stop, take your clamp off, put it on somewhere else, then continue routing. So they're great. You can get these online for about £10 a set. This little jig is for setting the depth of your router cutter. So you simply set up the depth that you want and then adjust your base until the cutter that's sticking out of there meets the depth that you want. Again, not expensive, but I'm quite confident that I could set a cutter up to within 0.5 millimetre using this. So a very good bit of kit. You can also get them with a digital readout on. I don't think that's necessary. Personally, you might want to. And the last thing is the router itself. So this is a Katsu router. It's a copy of a Makita router, but it was very cheap. It cost me £40, and I've had it over a year and it's never let me down. The only issue I have with it is sometimes it binds up between this base and the body of the router itself, and that makes it quite difficult to adjust the depth. Basically you just need to kind of make sure it's well maintained to stop that happening, but for what it costs, this has been a brilliant tool, and I think that's the important thing to remember. If you're not using these tools professionally 8 hours a day every day, you can get away with a cheaper tool. So yeah, so while it might look like I'm using a lot of expensive tools and equipment, sometimes it isn't always the case. I would say the router, the bench dogs, the depth guide, and the basic router bits that you would need to build something as simple as a Telecaster, for instance. I'd say there's probably less than £100 worth of equipment there. And it's equipment of good enough quality to potentially last you years if you look after it. Okay, so that's the control cavity and the bridge pickup route done. Now, the last time I built a Telecaster, I went to a great deal of trouble to create a very, very nicely fitting neck pocket template. So this fits my neck template perfectly. So I'm just going to reuse this on this build as well. So all I'm going to do is a repeat of the last process, is to mark out where the neck pocket needs to go, drill out the bulk of the waste on the drill press, attach the template and clean it up with the router. Okay, so I think it's worth pointing out at this stage that I've left probably about 6 or 7 mil of the material at the bottom of this neck pocket route in position, and the reason I've done that is the Forstner bit has a little tang on the end which leaves a dimple, so I want to make sure I've got enough material left so that I can route past those dimples and leave a nice smooth finish at the bottom like I've done in these other 2 routes. So now I'm just going to get some masking tape and super glue to attach this template to the body. Okay, so there's the neck pocket cut, nice and smooth, nice and neat, which is really good. It's what I'm after. Had to break out the bigger router in the end just to span that gap. The little router was struggling a little bit, but we got where we needed to be in the end. So that's the 3 routes we can do for the time being done. I'm expecting a delivery of pickups very soon, so once we have them we can determine what we need to do with the neck pickup. The last big bit we need to do on this body is to put the output jack hole in, but I'm not going to do that just yet because obviously I need to put a round over on this body, and if I drill that hole, the bearing that's going to guide my round over cutter will go into that hole and take a great big divot out of the top of the guitar, and we definitely don't want that. However, I'm going to leave putting the round overs on and drilling out for the jack until the next episode, when hopefully we'll have a set of pickups and we'll be able to push right on through with the rest of the routing on this body. I hope you've enjoyed this episode and found it informative. If so, give us a like, and if you haven't already done so, hit that subscribe button, and I'll look forward to seeing you on the next one. Thanks a lot for watching. Bye bye.